History 445, post-war Europe. I'll try to make this announcement relatively brief. We of course have our midterm exam this week. Um, do you see the study guide for the midterm exam? I basically give you a peek into uh, what the essays will be on. There will be a multiple choice section on the test, just like the quizzes you've taken, and you might go back and think about what we had on the the various quizzes, as well as quizzes and discussion forums and these types of things. Certainly are areas of consideration for questions on the multiple choice section. So there's a multiple choice section, and there's an essay. You write one of two essays. You get to choose which one you want to write about. Remember, these are big point essays, probably 30 or 40 points. So I want thorough responses. I want responses that explain in detail and fulfill a certain desired level of analysis as well. So I want analysis and I want specific detail on these essays. Again, take a look at the essay topics on the study guide. I will give you the topic. I won't tell you the exact question because I don't want you to. I don't want anybody to copy and paste a response. I want you to prepare for the essay topic. I want you to study. I want you to take notes. I want you to have bullet points for your potential essay. But I want you to have to respond to the question as it's asked, as opposed to being able to pre-write an essay. I'll give you the topic for the essays, but we'll have the question actually appear when you take the test. So midterm this week, see the study guide, multiple choice section, as well as an essay section, possible map. So be aware of geography. In this class we've been talking a lot about the borders and boundaries of these new countries, and so do see some of the maps. I've used a number of maps in the discussions, in the reading and assignments, and the pictures that are in those areas. So as well as on the PowerPoints. So do see those and review the PowerPoints if you need. Okay, this week we are reading from Jute, chapter 10, 11, and 12. We are talking about the emergence of a more affluent Europe, the sort of resurgence of European economies in the 1960s. Particularly, we're going to talk about the emergence of the modern social democracies, and also a comparison between the British economy and the German economy. So this is what we're reading this week. The factoid for this week is this. In the reading, you'll notice that the experience of German auto manufacturers and British auto manufacturers is very different. And there's a number of factors, and this is part of your discussion, so I'm not going to go into depth on the factors, but there's a number of factors. But to make the long story short, German manufacturers, auto manufacturers, of course, boomed. And today, of course, German auto manufacturers are considered the preeminent in the world, right? BMW, Mercedes-Benz, Volkswagen, and so forth. But a lot of people don't even remember that the British were initially very robust auto manufacturers. The British Motor Corporation, and also Leyland, actually manufactured a tremendous amount of cars in Great Britain during the 60s and 70s. However, the experience of the British Motor Corporation was such that it was bought out. Ultimately, bought out by BMW, and so British auto manufacturing really took a tailspin, and today there's really no major automobiles manufactured in Great Britain, whereas Germany is considered really the zenith of auto manufacturing in the world. And so the factoid for this week is this. In the period from really about 1900 to 1960, 1970, in auto racing, and of course Great Britain is a huge auto racing culture. Formula One racing is largely, to this day, is largely centered in Great Britain. All of the teams, more or less, except for Ferrari, are in Great Britain. They have their plants and everything stationed in Great Britain. So Great Britain was really a hub of of auto racing, as was the continent, but Great Britain kind of became hugely associated with this. And during the period really up through the 1960s, early 70s, it was very commonplace practice for nations to have national colors. And so if you were racing a British car or it was a British driver, it was customary in many cases to drive the national colors, which for the British was British Racing Green, which is a kind of a dark forest green. Many of you probably remember those dark green Jaguars that were so popular. Those dark green Jaguars are painted in British Racing Green. There's some other shades, but British Racing Green was the national color of the British auto racers up through the 1960s. And after the 1960s, of course, as racing changed and so forth, the use of national racing colors has it's really gone extinct. It's not really used anymore. But for years and years and years, it was customary for many countries, the United States, Italy, and of course Great Britain and others, to have national racing colors. And like I said, the colors might be because of a British driver, it might be because of a British car, but the British racing colors were that deep kind of forest green, British Racing Green, which was seen on many of the Jaguar models from this era. Okay, guys, so email me that factoid. I know that was a little bit long, and hopefully that is interesting to make sense to you. But email me that factoid no later than Wednesday by midnight. And don't forget we have a test this week. Email me if you have any questions. Pretty interesting reading this week, and it gets even more interesting next week, in my own personal opinion. So, so I hope everyone's enjoying the class, and let's have a great week.